Welcome to Sputnik, orbiting the world with me, George Galloway.
And me, Gayatri.
Nigeria's president, Goodluck Jonathan, hasn't enjoyed much in the way of good luck. Under his presidency, millions of people in northern Nigeria have been displaced, unique in the history of the country, even in the times of raging secessionist war. The spectre of breakup haunts this African giant, the largest and richest country in the continent.
Boko Haram, an Al-Qaeda-type insurgency group, have lifted their tactics from the burning alive of schoolgirls and churchgoers to full-scale assaults on police stations and army barracks, claiming thousands of lives, displacing millions, and promising even worse to come.
A state of emergency was imposed nearly a year ago by the incongruously named President Goodluck, but it doesn't seem to be working. The threat grows ever larger and more violent. On top of all that, Nigeria is bracing for a food crisis. The very mixture, therefore, which 30 years ago made Ethiopia a byword for a state of collapse. Joining us on the Sputnik to discuss a subject largely ignored by the Western media is economist and financial expert Chidi Obihara. Chidi, thanks very much for coming on the Sputnik. Here we have an Al-Qaeda outfit, once thought to be venomous and wicked but small, now effectively creating a state of emergency in Africa's arguably biggest, most important country, and millions of people displaced with a food crisis coming down the line. That all adds up to a bit of a disaster, no?
Hello, George. Thank you for having me on your show. The theory that Boko Haram, Nigeria's northeast separatist movement, is linked to Al-Qaeda is based on the supposition that a lot of weapons have come down from North Africa via the Islamic Maghreb after the demise of Colonel Gaddafi, and that this loose link to Al-Qaeda is a driving force behind it. But many analysts in Nigeria are convinced that issues of poverty, desertification, and an imbalance in the economy with very poor transport links are the key causes rather than an international terrorist spectre. I mean, it's a contributing factor, but I think it's a question of balancing both internal and external pressures.
Because one hadn't hitherto imagined that Nigerian Muslims were particularly inclined to extremism of any kind. Are you really saying that this can be economically fixed?
There's always been an appropriate stereotype that Nigerians will never kill themselves for anything. They're far more interested in making money, one way or other, than sort of sacrificing themselves for a broader ideological goal. It isn't part of the fabric of our society. I think that's one of the reasons why many Nigerians talk about the outside influences of the Islamic Maghreb rather than the sort of interior, domestic political drivers. But you make an extremely valid point about why it's important to develop the economic base and alleviate poverty of the country, both in the north and the south, as the most powerful tool against political opportunists, basically, who create movements like Al-Qaeda.
Nigeria should be, of course, extremely rich. Everyone should be living comfortably in Nigeria. If it weren't for poor governance and corruption and previous problems, there would be none of this. But of course, there are secessionist tendencies latent within the state. I'm old enough to remember one in particular in Biafra, which raged for years and which produced images of horror that hadn't actually been seen since the end of the Second World War. You're confident that Nigeria can remain a single state, are you?
But those are extremely powerful questions. Biafra was a formidably ugly event in global history, not just Nigerian history. Millions died, millions more were starved to death, and those images of starving children remain in many people's minds. Now, I think, ironically, one of the reasons why Nigeria probably will survive all this is that Nigerians do not want to go through that kind of process again. Despite the fact that on this particular occasion, the secessionist sort of pressures are coming from very different parts of the country, by the way. But even this time around, we're all very, very clear that our strengths make us far more capable as a nation than our constituent parts alone. So within the context of solving this problem, Goodluck Jonathan, our president, has called together a constitutional group of 492 statesmen who are right now, as we speak, debating the future of the country, its constitution, and the way the federal government relates to the constituent state governments. The thrust of the conference is to talk about ways of structuring Nigeria so that we don't have individual groups of minorities who feel that they are not loyal to the center. Now, within that context, there have been lots of ideas, but one of the most powerful ideas is the idea that commerce, and ironically linking different parts of the country better, makes everyone aim for higher, mostly economic goals, rather than worry about being politically disconnected or disenfranchised. There was a specific group of people who've been talking about building Africa's first high-speed rail link. Now, I kid you not when I tell you this is a game changer, because along with the amazing economic news that comes out of Nigeria on a daily basis, a high-speed train link in this part of Africa would change that sort of region forever. And I'm sure it would change the politics as well.
So a constitutional convention is his first response. The new economic policies, his second response. Meanwhile, though, the insurgency continues. Are the security forces in Nigeria up to the challenge?
There is a vicious rather than virtuous cycle in the way that the northeast of the country has tried to deal with this insurgency. But in specific examples of acts, for example, you know, the storming of the secondary school in Yobe, where 30 teenagers were bound, gagged, and killed, the outrage the entire nation feels makes Boko Haram's activities overshadow their apparent goals. So you get to a situation where we stop talking about the causes of Boko Haram and the solutions of Boko Haram, and we transfix ourselves on the actual acts of Boko Haram, and we need to move away from that. This year, we are rebasing our economy in Nigeria. So we're going from a $260 billion economy to a $400 billion economy, potentially. Now, this will make the Nigerian economy bigger than Denmark, bigger than Switzerland, bigger than Singapore. It's a game changer that, juxtaposed against sort of political discourse, almost dwarfs it. Because if you think about the idea that the world could be seeing its first middle-income African country, able to pull off big projects, employ millions of people, and trade and liberate those people, you begin to realize that we're actually facing something much wider and, as I say, game-changing than just solving a specific political problem.
Is this president up to it?
He hasn't declared whether or not he will run for president. He's quite clear that the Constitution allows him to, but he hasn't said if he's going to run or not. I think it'd be one of those episodes where someone as underrated as Goodluck Jonathan takes a challenging position and turns it into a spectacular opportunity.
He could be the John Major of Nigerian politics.
He could be the Margaret Thatcher of Nigerian politics.
Yeah, but John Major was an unexpected
change
treat.
agent, yes.
Yeah. Now, we can't, because there is a danger of a parallel universe in this conversation. I'm with you, by the way, on everything that you have said. But there is a danger of a parallel universe because as all these high-speed rail links are being built and economic and constitutional changes busily being prepared.
Even satellites, I believe.
Absolutely, yes.
In the midst of all that, there's a full-scale war going on. This is not a group of, you know, 25 Red Brigade terrorists in Italy or the Red Army fraction in Germany. This is an army that is causing the displacement, as I said, of millions, has killed thousands, is a real serious challenge to the Nigerian military. What do you know about this Boko Haram, and how do you therefore think we can see them defeated?
Again, profound questions. The theories about the formation of Boko Haram revolve around a man called Muhammad Yusuf. Apparently in 2002, he set up this resistance movement that was thought of at the time as being a sort of competition between the Kanuri in Borno and the Hausa in Sokoto. So it was seen as really being a sort of a northern one-upmanship between two powerful, historic caliphates. Now, things changed a lot, though, because in 2007, 2011, the new government, which included Goodluck Jonathan, didn't win a lot of approval in the north as it took over. So there were some politicians in the north who said they were going to make Nigeria ungovernable. Boko Haram is about a local group in the northeast of Nigeria who have an agenda that's focused around bettering the northeast of Nigeria, because they complain about poverty, rightly. They complain about corruption, and what's come out of that entire process is this confusion, as I said earlier on, between the tactics and the acts of Boko Haram and the cause. If we encourage agriculture in this part of the country, which has been a staple for thousands of years, if we link it so that agricultural produce can be exported from the coast, if we educate the population in a way that doesn't allow them to make statements like Boko Haram, books are sinful. If we go through that structural change, try and imagine how impressive a country we could have.
Well, I've always felt that Nigeria could and I hope will be a very impressive country indeed.
I have no doubt that the issues of poverty globally that cause people to adopt an inappropriate political stance may affect Nigeria, but I'm an optimist. Absolutely an optimist.
I could tell. Thank you very much indeed. It's been great
really nice
to have you
George.
on the Sputnik. Coming up after the break is another optimist, the one and only, believe me, Max Kaiser. Don't miss it.